The Christmas Eve Deliveries, Chapter 1. The Quiet House in First Shadows. The house chose me as much as I chose it. Appearing in my search results during that desperate October week, when my lease was ending and options were scarce. A modest two-bedroom rental on Maple Grove Lane, painted a forgettable beige with white trim that had started peeling near the gutters. The landlord mentioned something about the previous tenants leaving abruptly. But the price was right, and the neighborhood looked peaceful in the photos. I signed the lease without visiting, a decision I would spend many sleepless nights reconsidering. Moving in during early November, I immediately noticed the peculiar stillness that blanketed the street. Maple Grove Lane curved gently through a subdivision built sometime in the 80s, lined with similar houses that seemed to lean slightly inward, as if sharing secrets. My neighbors remained largely invisible. The house to my left stood empty, a faded for sale sign tilting in the overgrown yard. To my right lived an elderly couple I glimpsed only through curtains, their silhouettes moving slowly past windows that glowed dimly in the evenings. Across the street, a family with teenagers who left early each morning and returned late, their garage door closing behind them like a mouth swallowing them whole. The isolation suited me initially. I worked remotely, my laptop screen providing all the human interaction I needed during those gray November days. The house settled around me with creaks and sighs, the heating system clicking on with mechanical regularity, the refrigerator humming its constant song. I learned its rhythms quickly, distinguishing between the normal sounds of an aging structure and anything unusual. Nothing seemed unusual. Then December arrived with unseasonable warmth, the kind that makes Christmas decorations look absurd against green lawns and bare trees that should be snow-covered. My parents had moved to Arizona the previous year, and the flight costs during the holidays were astronomical. My college friends scattered to various family obligations across the country. For the first time in my life, I would spend Christmas alone. The prospect didn't bother me much. I planned a quiet day with movies, takeout, and the kind of peaceful solitude that becomes increasingly rare in adulthood. Christmas Eve morning dawned, cloudy and mild. I spent the early hours cleaning, doing laundry, trying to make the rental feel more like home, despite knowing I would probably leave when the lease ended. The neighborhood remained silent except for occasional cars passing, their tires hissing on the damp pavement. Around 2 in the afternoon, I drove to the grocery store, navigating through sparse holiday traffic to gather supplies for my solitary celebration. The store was surprisingly empty, most people already home with their families. I grabbed frozen pizza, ice cream, some craft beer, and headed back to Maple Grove Lane. Pulling into my driveway at 3:30, I noticed the package immediately. It sat centered on the porch, a brown cardboard box, roughly the size of a shoebox, utterly unremarkable except for its presence. No festive wrapping, no ribbon, no indication it was a Christmas gift. I parked and approached with my grocery bags, assuming someone had sent me something and forgotten to mention it. The label stopped me cold. The name printed there wasn't mine. Sarah Hendricks, it read, followed by my exact address. I set down my groceries and examined the box more carefully. The shipping label looked official, complete with tracking barcode and postal markings. The date showed it had been shipped 3 days earlier, on December 21st. No return address appeared anywhere on the package. I carried everything inside, leaving the box on the porch. Previous tenants, I reasoned. The landlord had mentioned they left suddenly, probably forwarding some mail but missing this delivery. It happened. I would contact the post office after Christmas. Have them redirected properly. Simple mistake. Easily resolved. But something about the box nagged at me as I unpacked groceries. The name Sarah Hendricks felt familiar somehow, though I couldn't place where I might have heard it. I tried searching online but found dozens of Sarah Hendricks across various social media platforms, none obviously connected to my address. The box remained on the porch as evening approached, a brown rectangle visible through the front window whenever I passed. The neighborhood grew darker earlier than usual, thick clouds blocking what little winter sun remained. I turned on the porch light around 5, then closed the curtains, suddenly uncomfortable with the idea of that package sitting outside in the growing darkness. I made dinner, watched television, tried to ignore the persistent feeling that something was slightly wrong. The house felt different somehow, the familiar creaks and sighs taking on new meaning. Around 7, I opened the curtains again and looked out. The box sat exactly where I'd left it, unchanged. The street beyond remained empty, porch lights glowing at regular intervals down the curve of Maple Grove Lane. No cars passed, no neighbors walked dogs or checked mailboxes. The stillness I'd initially appreciated now felt oppressive, like the neighborhood was holding its breath. I closed the curtains again and returned to my movie. Volume turned up higher than necessary. The house settled around me, and I tried to settle with it, tried to recapture that earlier sense of peaceful solitude. But my attention kept drifting to the front door, to the porch beyond it, to that brown cardboard box addressed to someone who wasn't me. Christmas Eve was supposed to be quiet and uneventful. I had planned for exactly that, embraced it even. But as 8 o'clock approached and full darkness claimed the neighborhood, I couldn't shake the feeling that the evening had other plans entirely. The box on my porch was just the beginning, though I didn't know it yet. I sat in my living room, surrounded by the normal sounds of my rental house, completely unaware that the quiet I'd grown accustomed to was about to shatter in ways I couldn't imagine. Asterisk Chapter 2. The pattern emerges ustum. The sound came at exactly 8 o'clock, so soft I almost missed it beneath the television's murmur. A gentle scraping, cardboard against wood, the unmistakable friction of something being set down on the porch. But nothing else accompanied it. No footsteps approaching or retreating. No engine idling at the curb. No voices, no rustling of clothing, no breath of movement. That should accompany a human presence delivering a package. I muted the television immediately, straining to hear anything else. The house held its breath with me, the heating system silent between cycles, the refrigerator's hum suddenly absent. Complete stillness pressed against my eardrums until I could hear my own heartbeat. Nothing. No follow-up sounds. No indication of who or what had left something on my porch. Moving quickly, I crossed to the front door and yanked it open, expecting to catch a delivery driver hurrying back to their truck. The porch light illuminated an empty scene. A second, brown box sat beside the first, slightly smaller but identical in its plain appearance. Beyond the porch, Maple Grove Lane stretched in both directions, completely deserted. No vehicle drove away. No figure walked between streetlights. The neighboring houses remained dark and silent, their windows reflecting nothing back at me. I stepped onto the porch, the December air warmer than it should be, carrying a thickness that made breathing feel labored. The street offered no answers. No movement caught my eye, no sound reached my ears. Whoever had delivered this package had vanished with impossible speed, or had never been there at all in any conventional sense. The second box bore a different name, Michael Hendricks. The same last name as the first package, but a different person. My address remained correct, printed clearly beneath the name. The shipping date showed December 22nd, one day more recent than the first package. I picked it up, feeling its weight, noting how the label faced outward perfectly, positioned for easy reading. Back inside with both boxes, I set them on the kitchen table and stared. 2 packages, 2 different recipients, same last name, consecutive shipping dates, my address. The coincidence felt too deliberate, too carefully arranged. I pulled out my phone and searched for Michael Hendricks, along with Sarah Hendricks, adding my street address to the search terms. The results materialized slowly. Old social media profiles buried beneath more recent entries. Sarah Hendricks had lived at my address 7 years ago. Her Facebook profile showing photos tagged at local restaurants, parks, the grocery store I'd visited that afternoon. Her posts stopped abruptly in October of that year, the account going dormant without explanation or farewell. Michael Hendricks appeared in some of her photos, tagged as her brother. His profile showed the same address during the same time period, his posts also ceasing that October. Both accounts frozen in digital amber. I searched for more information, finding nothing recent. No obituaries, no news articles, no indication of what had happened to make both siblings abandon their social media presence simultaneously. The profiles simply stopped, their last posts mundane and unremarkable. Sarah had shared a photo of autumn leaves. Michael had commented on a football game. Then, silence. The heating system kicked on with a rattle that made me jump. I checked the time, 9:45. The boxes sat on my table like accusations, their brown surfaces revealing nothing. I considered opening them, but something stopped me. They weren't addressed to me. Whatever was inside wasn't meant for my eyes, even if the delivery location suggested otherwise. At exactly 10 o'clock, the sound came again. Cardboard touching wood. That same soft scraping, perfectly timed. I was already moving toward the door when I heard it, but even my immediate response wasn't fast enough. The porch revealed a third package, larger than the previous 2, heavier when I lifted it. The label faced outward with that same deliberate positioning, but this time the name was different. Patricia Morrison. The shipping date showed December 23rd yesterday. Continuing the pattern, the street remained empty. The impossible speed of the delivery, the complete absence of any delivery vehicle or person, sent ice through my veins despite the warm evening. I grabbed the box and retreated inside, locking the door behind me with shaking hands. Patricia Morrison's online presence told a similar story. She had lived at my address 9 years ago, her digital footprint showing a woman in her 50s who posted frequently about gardening and her grandchildren. Her accounts went silent in October of that year. The same month, the Hendricks siblings had disappeared from social media. 3 people, 3 different time periods, all living at my address, all vanishing from online presence in October. I sat at my kitchen table, surrounded by 3 packages addressed to ghosts, trying to rationalize what was happening. Delivery errors occurred constantly. Automated systems made mistakes. Perhaps some warehouse had old address labels, was clearing out ancient inventory, sending packages to outdated locations. But that explanation couldn't account for the timing, the precision of the deliveries, the complete absence of any delivery person. The house felt different now. The familiar creaks, taking on sinister meaning. Every settling sound made me flinch. Every distant noise outside pulled my attention to the windows. I kept the curtains closed, suddenly afraid of what might be looking back if I opened them. Around 11, I tried calling the post office, knowing it was closed but needing to hear the recorded message. Some connection to normal bureaucratic processes. The number rang endlessly without even reaching voicemail, as if the line extended into empty space. I tried the shipping company listed on the labels, finding the same endless ringing, the same absence of any automated system or human response. The packages sat before me. 3 brown boxes that shouldn't exist, addressed to people who had lived here years ago, and then vanished from digital existence every October. I thought about opening them, about discovering what was inside. But my hands wouldn't cooperate. Some instinct deeper than curiosity warned me that opening these packages would be a mistake, would invite something into my awareness that was better left unknown. The clock showed 11:28 when I finally moved the boxes to the front hallway. Unable to look at them anymore, I turned on every light in the house, flooding each room with brightness, pushing back the darkness that seemed to press against the windows. The neighborhood outside remained silent. No Christmas Eve celebrations, no families gathering, no cars passing, just stillness and waiting. Chapter 3. Escalation and Terror. The porch light clicked on at 11:30, flooding the front yard with harsh white illumination that made the darkness beyond seem deeper by contrast. I stood frozen in the hallway, staring at the door, knowing with absolute certainty that I hadn't touched the switch. The house had no automatic sensors, no timer system, no smart home features that might explain the light activating on its own. Someone or something had turned it on, and that someone was close enough to reach the switch mounted beside my front door. My breath came shallow and quick. heart hammering against my ribs with enough force that I felt it in my throat. The 3 packages sat stacked against the wall where I'd left them, brown and innocuous and terrifying. Through the window beside the door, I could see the porch, bathed in that clinical white light, empty, except for the familiar welcome mat and the dead leaves that had collected in the corner. Then I saw it. A 4th package, smaller and flatter than the others, placed with geometric precision directly in front of the door, not off to the side like the previous deliveries, but centered perfectly, blocking the threshold. This time the label didn't face outward. The box sat with its blank side visible, offering no information about its recipient or contents. I didn't move toward the door. Every instinct screamed against opening it, against stepping onto that illuminated porch where something had just been standing, had just left that package, had reached over to flip the light switch with deliberate intention. The delivery wasn't random anymore, wasn't following the pattern of the previous packages. This was a message, a statement, a line being crossed. I backed away from the door, my eyes never leaving that 4th box. The house suddenly felt insubstantial, its walls too thin, its locks too flimsy. I moved through the rooms, turning on every remaining light, the bathroom, the closets, even the lights inside the refrigerator and oven, flooding my rental with brightness until shadows had nowhere to hide. The electricity bill didn't matter. Being able to see every corner, every potential hiding place, was all that mattered. The clock in the kitchen showed 11:43. 17 minutes until midnight, until Christmas Day officially began. I had no idea why that felt significant, but the approaching hour weighed on me like a physical pressure. Something was building toward that moment, some culmination that the packages had been leading toward all evening. I tried my phone again, dialing 911 with trembling fingers. The call connected, the line open, but no sound came through. No ringing, no operator, no automated message. Just silence, as if the phone was connected to nothing, transmitting my voice into empty space. I ended the call and tried again with the same result. My cell signal showed full bars, the connection active, but somehow unable to reach anyone beyond my isolated bubble. The heating system shut off, plunging the house into a silence so complete it felt suffocating. I stood in my kitchen surrounded by blazing lights, listening to nothing, waiting for something. The refrigerator's hum had stopped. The usual settling sounds of the house had ceased. Even the ambient noise of the neighborhood, the distant traffic, the wind through trees, had vanished. The silence pressed against my eardrums until I heard the rush of my own blood. The whisper of my breathing, the creak of my joints as I shifted weight. Then I heard it, breathing that wasn't mine, slow and measured, coming from just outside the front door. Not labored or heavy, but deliberate, as if something was standing on my porch, taking careful, controlled breaths. The sound was too close, too intimate, carrying through the door as if the wood offered no barrier at all. I moved backward until my spine hit the kitchen counter, my eyes fixed on the hallway leading to the front door. The breathing continued, steady and patient. No footsteps accompanied it, no movement, just that rhythmic inhalation and exhalation that suggested a presence waiting, watching, knowing I was inside listening. Minutes stretched into eternities. The breathing never changed its pattern, never grew louder or softer, maintained that same careful rhythm that was somehow worse than any aggressive sound would have been. This wasn't something trying to frighten me into action. This was something content to wait, to let my fear build naturally. To let me understand how completely trapped I was. My legs began to shake, forcing me to slide down the cabinet until I sat on the kitchen floor, my back against the wood, my eyes still locked on the hallway. The lights blazed around me, offering no comfort, their brightness only emphasizing how exposed I was, how visible through any window if something chose to look inside. The breathing continued. 5 minutes. 10. 15. My mind raced through impossible explanations, each more desperate than the last. A neighbor playing a prank, though I barely knew my neighbors and nothing about this felt playful. A delivery driver with a sick sense of humor, though no delivery driver would stand breathing on a porch for this long. Something else, something that knew the names of people who had lived here years ago, something that could deliver packages without being seen, something that wanted me to know it was there. At 11:58, the breathing stopped. Not gradually, not with any transitional sound, but simply ceased as if cut with a knife. The silence that followed felt even more oppressive, pregnant with anticipation. I waited for footsteps retreating, for any indication the presence had left, but heard nothing. The absence of sound was absolute, as if the world outside my house had been erased. Midnight arrived in that terrible silence. No church bells rang in the distance. No neighbors celebrated. No cars passed, marking the transition into Christmas Day. Just stillness and the blazing lights and my ragged breathing as I sat on my kitchen floor, too terrified to move. The porch light clicked off at 12:03, plunging the front yard back into darkness. I watched through the hallway as the illumination died, leaving only the glow from inside the house spilling weakly through the windows. The fourth package remained visible as a dark rectangle against the porch boards, still blocking the door, still refusing to reveal its label. I didn't move from the kitchen floor. My legs wouldn't support me. Anyway, muscles locked with fear and exhaustion. I sat there as the minutes crawled past, 1 o'clock approaching, then passing. The house remained silent, no return of the breathing, no new sounds from outside. But I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, of something patient and persistent maintaining its vigil just beyond my walls. At 3:17, the porch light clicked on again. I heard it from the kitchen. That distinctive sound of the switch engaging, the sudden illumination visible as a glow in the hallway. I didn't get up to look. I couldn't. My body refused to move, refused to investigate, some primal part of my brain understanding that looking would be a mistake, that seeing what was on the porch at 3:17 in the morning would break something fundamental in my understanding of reality. The light stayed on this time, burning steadily, as the hours crawled toward dawn. I remained on the kitchen floor, my back against the cabinet, my eyes open and staring at nothing. Sleep was impossible. Moving was impossible. All I could do was wait for sunrise, wait for Christmas morning, wait to see what would be revealed when darkness finally lifted, and I could no longer hide inside my illuminated house. Asterisk. Chapter 4. Christmas morning and lasting shadows. Dawn arrived with agonizing slowness, gray light seeping through the windows like dirty water. I remained on the kitchen floor until the darkness outside had fully retreated, until I could see the neighboring houses clearly, their Christmas decorations looking absurd in the pale morning light. Only then did I force my cramped legs to straighten, my body protesting every movement as I pulled myself upright, using the counter. The porch light still burned, unnecessary now in the daylight. I approached the front door with shuffling steps, my muscles stiff from hours on the cold tile floor. Through the window, I could see the fourth package still centered on the threshold, its blank side facing me, as it had all night. But there were more now. 2 additional boxes sat on the porch steps, placed with the same careful precision as all the others. These were different sizes, one tall and narrow, one square and compact. And unlike the fourth package, their labels faced outward, positioned for easy reading. My hand shook as I unlocked the door and pulled it open. The morning air felt normal, carrying the slight chill that December should have brought days ago. Nothing seemed unusual about the porch, the yard, the street beyond. Maple Grove Lane looked exactly as it always did, quiet and empty, houses sitting comfortably in the growing light. I bent to examine the new packages without touching them. The tall one bore my name, but wrong. The spelling was close. One letter transposed, another substituted, like someone had heard my name spoken, but never seen it written. The square package showed the same thing, my name rendered incorrectly in a different way. Another near miss that suggested guessing rather than knowing. 6 packages total now. 3 addressed to former residents who had vanished from digital existence. 1 with no visible label. 2 addressed to versions of my name that didn't quite exist. I left them all on the porch and went inside to call the post office. My phone finally connecting to the outside world, as if the previous night's isolation had been a dream. The postal worker I reached sounded cheerful and helpful, her voice jarringly normal after the night's terror. She asked for the tracking numbers, typed them into her system, then paused. No records existed for any of the packages. The numbers weren't in their database, had never been scanned at any facility, showed no chain of custody or delivery confirmation. As far as the Postal Service was concerned, these packages had never existed in their system. I tried the shipping company next, reading the information from the labels, receiving the same answer. No records. No deliveries scheduled to my address. No explanation for how 6 packages could appear on my porch, bearing their official labels and tracking numbers without ever entering their logistics network. The neighbors were my last hope. I knocked on doors up and down Maple Grove Lane, speaking to people I'd only glimpsed in passing during my 2 months in the house. The elderly couple to my right answered slowly, peering at me with confusion. They'd seen nothing unusual, heard nothing strange, noticed no vehicles stopping at my house. The family across the street said the same. Everyone I spoke to reported a quiet, uneventful Christmas Eve. No disturbances, no deliveries, nothing out of the ordinary. One neighbor mentioned that previous tenants had complained about strange occurrences too, though she couldn't remember the details. Another said the house had a history of short-term renters, people who never stayed more than a year. The information felt significant but offered no answers, just confirmation that something about my address attracted inexplicable events. I spent Christmas Day inside, the packages still sitting on my porch. I couldn't bring myself to open them, couldn't shake the feeling that doing so would complete some transaction I didn't understand. The boxes addressed to former residents held mysteries about people who had disappeared from online presence. The one with no visible label concealed something I was better off not knowing. And the two bearing my misspelled name suggested an entity that knew me but imperfectly, that could guess at my identity without fully grasping it. As daylight faded into evening, I finally moved all 6 packages to the garage, stacking them in the corner where I wouldn't have to see them. The next morning, they were gone. Not stolen, not moved, simply absent, as if they had never existed. The garage showed no signs of entry. The door still locked from inside, but the corner where I'd stacked them stood empty. I called the landlord that afternoon and gave notice. He didn't seem surprised, mentioned something about the security deposit and wished me luck finding a new place. I moved out before New Year's, taking only what I'd brought, leaving the house to its silence and its secrets. The post office never found delivery records. The shipping company never explained the tracking numbers. The neighbors never remembered seeing anything unusual. The mystery remained unsolved, a collection of impossible events that happened and then stopped, leaving no evidence except my own shattered sense of security. Years have passed since that Christmas Eve, but the experience left permanent marks. I live in a different city now, in an apartment building, surrounded by other people, where isolation feels impossible. But every December 24th, as evening approaches, I feel the old fear returning. I check my door obsessively, looking for packages that shouldn't be there. I listen for sounds that don't belong, for breathing that isn't mine. Sometimes, around midnight, I hear it, that soft scraping of cardboard against wood, so faint it might be imagination. I never find anything when I look, but the sound persists in my memory, as real as it was that night. The packages never came back, but the question of what was inside them haunts me still. What did those boxes contain? What would have happened if I'd opened the ones bearing my misspelled name? What was the entity that delivered them trying to communicate? And why did it stop? I'll never know the answers. Some mysteries remain unsolved, not because the truth is hidden, but because the truth exists beyond normal understanding. In spaces where logic fails and conventional explanations crumble. Whatever visited my house that Christmas Eve knew things it shouldn't have known, could do things that shouldn't be possible, and wanted something from me that I was wise enough not to give. The misspelled names haunt me most. Something knew me, but not quite well enough could approximate my identity without fully grasping it. That imperfect knowledge feels more terrifying than complete ignorance would have been, suggesting an intelligence that operates adjacent to our reality, close enough to observe but not close enough to fully comprehend. Every Christmas Eve, I remember, I check my door. I listen for that sound. And I'm grateful that whatever delivered those packages to Maple Grove Lane has left me alone since, content perhaps with whatever message it conveyed, through 6 brown boxes and 1 night of absolute terror. The holiday will never feel the same, forever shadowed by the memory of that Christmas when something unknown came calling, bearing gifts I was too afraid to accept.